Hi, everybody. North State Rocks podcast. This episode, really excited about. We have Paul Reuter, good friend of mine. He is the managing engineer and president of Pace Engineering, based in Redding, California. An incredible engineering firm, incredible employees, 100% employee owned, just an amazing business with an incredible culture. Really excited for you to listen.
Welcome to the North State Rocks podcast. Discover the hidden gems and extraordinary people of California's North State region. Join Perry Thompson, CEO of Hat Creek Construction and Materials, as he explores the vibrant communities and interesting neighbors that make our region a great place to live, work, and play. Tune in, be inspired, and rediscover the North State. This is your community. This is your story.
Well, thanks for taking the time, buddy. I really appreciate it. So this is the North State Rocks podcast. This is Paul Reuter. I'm going to make sure I get this right. I think your official title is President and Managing Engineer of Pace Engineering. Did I get that right?
You did.
Yeah. I know I'm in Vistage with you, so we say just CEO, right? And my official title is President as well, and we use CEO, but I think more people know what CEO means than President. So yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so I was just doing a little research, kind of getting ready, and I saw that you've been the managing engineer since 2008. Yeah, so can we just talk about that for a second? First of all, that means you've been doing this for 17 years, so that's something. That's something to be really proud of. But also, especially for some of our younger audience, I don't think many people realize what 2008 was like, and 2009 and 2010. I was thinking of all the times to be thrust into the number one position at a large Reading-based engineering firm. 2008 would not be my pick to be to go into that role. So can you reflect on that a little bit for us?
Yeah, you know, at the time, Perry, I probably wasn't smart enough to realize what I was getting myself into, but
I doubt that.
It was funny that the first full year after I took over was the worst financial performance in the history of Pace. We've been in business for 50 years. So I was like, okay, got that out of the way. No place to go but up now.
Only go up from here. Yeah. That's amazing.
It was as you know, it was a tough time, and we did have some layoffs. That was a time when in one day, every land development project that we were working on, they called and said, stop. And, but despite that, the company still had a profit at the end of that year, and wasn't what we were forecast or we were hoping for, but we still had a profit. We still paid out dividends to our shareholders. And so it wasn't, we didn't completely fail, but it was a challenge for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So that's incredible. I kind of just saw that date and kind of just went down that rabbit hole immediately. But can you just give us a little bit? I mean, you said in 2008, the company had been in business for 50 years. I know Pace is 100% employee owned, which is just incredible to me because most of the business owners I'm talking to and businesses I'm talking to, one of their biggest challenges is their succession plan, or in most cases, lack thereof. So can you just tell us a little bit about the history of Pace and, how long you've been in business, and then when it kind of became employee owned, and then just a little bit about nothing proprietary, of course, but anything that's that you can share about kind of how that process works.
Sure. Yeah. And in 2008, I think we'd been in business about 32 years, Perry. We're coming up on our 50-year anniversary next year. So we started in 1976, and it's really three individuals, Larry Keppel, Paul Jones, and Ray Toney, that broke away from CH2M Hill at the time and wanted to form a local engineering company that would allow them to be home at night with their families. CH2, even back in those days, was a huge company and worked internationally, and they were in, every other state but California for days at a time, and they had young families. So they started Pace kind of out of their garage, and then they developed a little office there on Court Street. And then in the late 70s, they built the building on Court Street that we were in for almost 40 years. and actually over 40 years. And so they started out just the three of them, and then slowly but surely they added staff. They added a survey department, and got even a couple more guys to come over from CH2M Hill. And by the time I started at Pace, I started as a student in 1990. I had finished my junior year in college, and the company was looking for a student intern to basically extract records from one of our clients to do a master water plan. And so I spent a summer digging into the dungeon and basements of old City Hall up in Weed to try to find these old documents. And it took me about 2 weeks when I realized that I loved the company, number one, the people. You know, I was like a 20-year-old kid at the time, and everybody just treated me with the utmost respect. So that was a no-brainer for me. But then the challenge was I was studying structural engineering at the time. Pace didn't need any structural engineers. They really needed wastewater engineers. So I said, well, okay, I'll switch to that. Would you hire me then? And they said, well, we'd really like you to have a master's degree. I'm going, oh my gosh, I'm ready to be done and, move on with my life. But I figured if that's what it's going to take to go to work there, then I'll do it. So
that's amazing.
Sac State had a 30-unit master's with a comprehensive exam and a research paper as opposed to a full thesis. So I went through that program. Pace actually gave me a letter of intent before I went off and did that. So it was really, they kind of treated it as a kind of a leave of absence. And then they loaned me some money to get the degree because my parents said, no, we're done. Bachelor's is good. And so I qualified for about a quarter of the money I needed in financial aid. So Pace loaned me the rest. And I paid that back over the first year of my employment with them. And that was in 93. So, fast forward several years, Larry Keppel, kind of the brainchild of of the original company, he retired in 1998 and Sam Smith took over. And he held the president role till 2008. And they approached me. I think at the time I was in my mid 30s and I was an associate engineer, and they approached me and I thought, really? I mean, what? You guys couldn't come up with anybody any better than that? I mean, geez, and so they kind of felt that I was the one, and I said, well, I'll do the best I can if that's what you think's best for the company. And so we did a 3-year transition where we announced to the company that the transition was going to happen in 2005. So it gave kind of 3 years for people to grab on and accept the fact. I was younger than most in the company at that time. And that transition was a really good time because Sam was still here as the president and he was kind of working me into doing some higher level things. And so that worked really well. So anyway, the rest is pretty much history. In terms of our ownership, when the founders were retiring in the late 90s, they had the forethought to develop an internal stock ownership program. And it was really generous of them. It really required them to give something up, which a lot of founders aren't willing to do. And they really appreciated that if they were willing to give something up, they would get something, from their investment. And so they sold shares to other employees. And at that time, the share buy-in wasn't based on profits, that people had to take second mortgages or come up with their own financial means to buy into the ownership. And but once that started, then the buy-in is done with annual bonuses from profits of the company. So there's no financial obligation by the individual to become a shareholder. They're essentially acquiring their ownership through the profits of the company each year. And it's a fairly unique program. I've talked to several individuals in our industry that have never heard of that. And I think now we've got about 40 something shareholders. And essentially when you become a licensed professional, whether it's in surveying or engineering at Pace, you're brought in to the ownership program. we do have some non-professional staff that we consider key, key financial people, maybe office managers, key technicians that have been here a long time and have key roles. But that's generally how it works. So we really try to promote that, especially when we're hiring young staff. And, it's kind of, hey, you get out of school and you get your PE, you can have an ownership stake in your company in your mid-20s. And then that builds over time. And so it's been a really great program. And of course, it's somewhat old school, like you and I, Perry, that, it relies on longevity and people sticking around and being loyal, to the company, which is kind of an old school mentality these days. But we've been able to find people, even young Gen Zers, that are kind of bought into that concept. They really want a place they can grow roots and be here for the long haul. So the key is finding those individuals that are willing to perpetuate that model.
So first of all, got a couple things here. Number one, I think you guys, well, first of all, you're engineers. So, I have dealt with people that have dealt with you guys, attorneys, that kind of stuff. And, the overriding compliment you guys get is, well, they're engineers and everything is done right. Right. And most attorneys, like when they're talking about success, because we're doing a lot of that succession stuff and trying to figure all that out in our company. And so, they're like, the attorneys I talk to are like, yeah, most people write this big, long thing. And then, they're supposed to revisit the value of the company every year or every 5 years. And guess what? They don't do shit for the next 20 years or until there's a problem, right? Yeah. They don't do anything. He goes, unless you're like Pace Engineering and they do what you're supposed to do all the way along the process. So, I think that you guys, there might be a business model here, Paul, where you guys could roll out a book that says this is how you do it. But you're probably going to need a second book saying this is how you have the discipline to make everybody do what they're supposed to do, because maybe only engineers have that acumen to make sure it actually gets, those valuations are dealt with and everything. So, it's a lot. I got to imagine that's a lot of back office. Hey, they make sure he's giving his shares up, and then that so-and-so is buying their shares in. Just seems like a lot to manage, and maybe it's kind of automatic at this point, but it just seems like a lot to manage behind the scenes.
Yeah, it requires management, Perry, and our fiscal year ends the end of September, so we deal with it every September, and we've been doing it so long, and we've got the templates and spreadsheets and all that it's not a huge lift, really. And it takes a few days in September. Then we have an internal board meeting and kind of go through that. But the really underlying concept for it to work is, and I know you can appreciate this too, is just you have to have a really teamwork oriented culture. And we win together, we lose together. You live and die together, and no individual is more important or bigger than the team. And so we share profits as a team. And that's kind of different than, say, your example with the attorney model, because even our corporate attorney says, "Oh my God, I don't share anything with anybody that anything I win. No, that's all mine. Mine. Right, and so that's why these attorneys, that their names are always changing on their titles, and they can't stay together. So you gotta. That culture, without that culture, the program doesn't work. And plus it takes pressure off people. And you experience this too. Sometimes you might have a project that, you went in, it's very tight budget, maybe even under budget, maybe some things that, maybe you took the job to keep your guys busy or things you missed. But you've got to finish the job, and you've got to do it right, and you've got to maintain that relationship with your client. And so you're going to put probably your A team on that job to minimize the bleeding and try to get through it. Well, it's not fair to the A team to put them on a job like that when there isn't much upside to make any money for the company, and then have them get penalized for it down the road, right? And so meanwhile, you put B and C team on the jobs that have plenty of money, and they come through and for you. So it works just like that with us. We're putting our best people on the challenging project, maybe not always the most profitable projects, just to maintain the relationship, the reputation. And so you want to, if you have that teamwork culture, the A team understands that they're taking one for the team, but they're not going to get hurt at the end of the day when it comes to sharing profits and that sort of thing.
Yeah, which is huge. Absolutely huge. Yeah. So, and then like you said, we do it every September. So there has to be an innate trust, and then everybody that's doing it, that you're going to follow through. I think that is what culture is all about. You can say, here's our core values, they're on the wall, but if you don't live by them and do it consistently, it doesn't mean anything. And people can see right through that, and they, so I've seen both sides of that. So, okay. So next question is on this ownership structure. Is it reserved for your engineers and your licensed surveyors only, or is it, receptionist? Is it, how broad does it go within the company?
It's a good question. And we really call it a key employee program. Okay. So it isn't necessarily reserved for licensed professionals, because we have key individuals in our organization that aren't necessarily licensed professionals, but provide very important service roles for us. And so, for example, our experienced tech editor, our CFO, office manager, we may have some really experienced field guys that do field inspections that have 20, 30 years experience. Our IT head, those are all non-professional roles, at least compared to surveying and engineering that are in our program.
I see.
So it's kind of the concept is that, okay, if the proverbial poop hits the fan and you've got to build your company with your shareholders and start over, what does that shareholder makeup need to be? Right.
No, that makes sense. So how many employees, and I don't need exact, but I know you know how many employees you have, but roughly how many or what percentage of those employees are in the ownership structure, if you don't mind me asking that?
Yeah, I think right now we've got about 85 on the payroll, and including some student interns that are getting ready to go back to school. And our ownership, I believe, is around low 40s, so about half.
Oh, wow. Holy cow. That's incredible. I thought the number might be 30, would be pretty large, but that's amazing. That is amazing, Paul. Okay. All right. So, let's switch to Paul just a little bit. So, did I read that you're from Weed? Did you go to high school in Weed, California, buddy?
I did. Yeah.
That's like going to Fall River. That's
I know. We had to cross paths on the football field or baseball diamond, Perry.
Yeah.
What year did you graduate? Were you 89?
I graduated 88.
88. Okay, so you were a year behind me. I was 87.
Okay.
And Weed High School. My parents still live up there. In fact, we're getting ready to build them a house down here to get them closer to medical care and out of the mountains and snow and firewood and all that stuff. I graduated from Weed. I went to college at Siskiyous for 2 years and then transferred down to UC Davis. So no regrets whatsoever about any of that.
Yeah. I think it's awesome where we grew up in these small towns, and I wouldn't trade it for anything either. So you said sports. What sports did you end up playing, Paul?
Football and baseball.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. And then I remember your son was super into basketball. So you didn't play any basketball, but your kids were super into that. At least a couple of them were, I know.
Yeah. Both my boys played basketball through high school, and I was kind of brokenhearted that they didn't like baseball and just didn't move enough for them, and not enough stimulation, which I understood, but I was still heartbroken. And of course, I couldn't dribble a basketball and chew gum at the same time. So somehow they got those skills from their mother or something.
Yeah, that's incredible. Okay. Yeah. So, what do you, this is called the North State Rocks podcast. So, tell me about, I know you're a big outdoorsman. So what do you like to do when you're not working?
Well, yep. I love to hunt and fish. Those are probably my big passions. But, as I get older, I like to do just about any activity. I don't care what it is with my family and my wife and my two boys. And, they're in their mid to late 20s now and developing their own paths. And so it's harder and harder to get everybody together. But I live for those opportunities. And I know I've talked to you about it too. You're the same way with your kids and wife and, camping. I like to backpack, and I've got some property to take care of that I live on. That's probably, I get older, that may be more of a burden, but no, it's all good. In fact, my youngest son is coming over from Reno this week, and we're going to try to shoot some doves Monday and Tuesday with some family. And so I'm looking forward to that. But
nice.
I'm not a real sophisticated guy, Perry.
Yeah. Obviously I've known you for quite a while because our kids played in that basketball circle and we're on a traveling team together, and we got to spend a lot of time just not doing work stuff, which was awesome. Yeah. And then of course, gotten to know you more on a professional level in our Vistage group here in Redding. That's been awesome. But I get in fact, Travis Corder and I were talking about you because I said, guess who I'm going to have on the podcast today? And, so Travis was super excited that he's like, and I'm like, got any advice for me? And so one of the things that he talked about, which I think is good, is that we got to get Paul to talk about himself a little bit, because you are probably the most selfless person I've been around in the Vistage group. It's never, hey, here are my problems. It's always, how can I help? In fact, we usually have to pull teeth to get you to even process any type of challenge that you're dealing with. And that's probably just because you're so much better than all of the rest of us and managing your team. I think that's what it's really about, Paul. But you're just so selfless and so a professional and quiet. And how can I help? Just so ready to jump in, and how can I assist in whatever challenge you're dealing with? And I've just always really, really appreciated that about you. So thank you for being that guy. So that's why I'm kind of asking more about your personal stuff and your kids. But I want to follow that up with a stat that I heard that really is about half depressing, but it was a kind of a great alignment thing for me. I heard it a few years ago, and it was basically, I'm probably going to butcher it, but roughly the premise is you have 19 years with your kids. 0 through 18, they're with you. And then for the rest of your life, you have approximately 1 year of total time that you get to spend with them. And holy cow, you want to talk about hit you over the head with a frying pan moment of just clarity. And so ever since I heard that a few years ago, I'm like, that's not going to be 1 year. I'm going to try and make that 10 years or whatever that is. I'm just going to try and blow that out of the water. And of course, a lot of people define what is success. And I'll tell you for me, and I know it's for you too, but my wife and I define success as, do your adult kids choose to spend time with you? Right? And if the answer is yes, then in my mind, you've succeeded. Right. That's the true definition of success. And of course, we don't have any kids married yet, have one engaged, don't have any grandkids yet, but all of that perpetuates once, but it all starts with them choosing to want to spend time with you. So I think you guys have done an amazing job of that. Can you kind of reflect on that a little bit for me? Yeah,
you and I are 100% in line, Perry, with that. Another statistic that I've heard that kind of relates to what you said that is eye-opening is they claim that you'll spend 80% of your time with your children in your life before they're 12 years old.
Yeah, that's another
Yeah. So
gutting one.
Yeah. As I've gotten older, my kids have, moved out of the house, and I have all these young employees with young families and young kids, and I see the stresses from the job and being a husband or a wife and all the stress that comes with that. And I spend a lot of my time just counseling them, just saying, hey, this is the best time of your life. And, there's nothing more important in these four walls of work that takes the place of what you have at home. And, you do whatever you take. You never miss an event, a ball game, anything. And I emphasize that because I don't have any regrets, obviously, but you just, like you too, I'm sure, when the kids were young and you were, building the company and trying to get your feet on the ground, and that was a big focus of your life. And my wife, it's funny. My youngest son brought his new girlfriend up to Reading a few weeks ago, and so Julie was showing videos of the kids growing up, and VHS stuff. And Perry, there was stuff on there that I'd never seen.
Really?
And and just fortunately, Julie stayed home with the boys, and she had a camera going all the time. And I remember at the time thinking, "Oh my gosh, what are you doing that for?" It's I didn't appreciate that. And now I sit back and I see these videos and go, "Oh my gosh, I'm so thankful that she took the time to do that." And but no, you're absolutely right. That's how I view success. There's nothing, when we're gone and away from our organizations, if we've done our job, they're gonna flourish and they're gonna move past us. And as the years go on, they won't even know our names. And so at some point when we're on our deathbeds, what are you going to regret? Nobody ever regrets that they didn't spend enough time at the office. Yeah. So I think you and I are two peas in a pod, Perry, when it comes to that philosophy. And I think that's how we try to lead our organizations. And one of the things I really appreciate about Vistage and Martin Flack especially is, he's really a big proponent on servant leadership. And that fits well with my personality of, hey, I'm here to serve you guys. Whatever you need me to do, want me to do, I'm here for you. And I think that's an important leadership trait.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, really, really well said. So let's kind of pivot back to that. So I've always, I've been around your team. We've done, it's been quite a few years, but we've done some projects with your team, but more around, events and Reading and things where I get to interact with your people, and, always super positive, always how can we help, how can we roll up our sleeves, and just also always super grateful about whether you're investing to have them come to a speaker so they can expand their career growth and their knowledge. It always seems that they have just a ton of gratitude for that and just have just great attitude. So and I know just being around you and being around your team, how great the culture is at Pace. So what do you attribute, what do you, in your mind as, the leader of that organization for the last 17 years, how do you, Bruce Dean has famously told us, CEO's got one job, and that is to protect your culture, right? Well, got to have a culture worth protecting, number one. But then once you have it, protecting it is number two. But what do you contribute? What makes the culture so great at Pace? And then what do you and your team actively do to protect that?
Yeah, great question. I think the culture was started with our founders, and it's heavy on family, heavy on teamwork, heavy on integrity and work-life balance. And that's the first thing I saw as a 20-year-old kid. The first 2 weeks I worked here, it's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So, they started it, and we've just tried to really perpetuate that, and try to give people autonomy, give them support, focus on what's right, not who's right, and just give your best effort. Nobody's perfect. We all strive for perfection, but it's not attainable. So excellence is acceptable. And another thing too, Perry, is our company are all local individuals that went through local schools. And I think we try to hire college graduates. There's a lot of talent from the North State that gets away from us. And, the kids, they go to small schools like Fall River and Weed and Bernie and even the bigger high schools around Reading. And they're very, very smart, and they move out of the area never to be seen again. And so we're trying to build our company with those that are in that talent pool that maybe want to come back. And they have family roots here. Maybe they have a spouse that has roots here, and they want to raise their kids in Northern California, which I think is the best place on earth. And so we're looking for those kind of individuals, and they really appreciate being here, being able to work in a community that they grew up in and loved. And so that's got to transcend to some extent to just a real positive outlook, positive attitude. And, that comes across through their personal interactions as well as the business interactions. And that's what people see. And so I don't know what the magic bullet is, Perry. Like I say, the culture was started before I got here, and we've just tried to live by those core values. We talk a lot about core values, and there's one thing to post them up and say, yeah, those are our core values, but you have to live by them. And I think we do that. I think our entire management team and our senior leaders sincerely try to live by those core values. And it's, even though we feel like we're a high performing company, I will tell anybody that there's nothing more important than what's going on in your personal life. And there's nothing in these walls that trump that. I don't care what the situation is. So I was afraid you were going to ask me that, and I was hoping I'd have a better answer.
I thought that was a great answer. I thought that was a spectacular answer. You did an excellent job. Okay, so now I want to challenge you with, as leaders, right? We have, it's not always, hey, every team member is aligned with our core values and our culture, right? So we're going to always have a small, handful or what have you of problematic, team members. So I'm just kind of curious how, you're saying, hey, we've got to live the core values. Have you guys had instances in your tenure as the last 17 years where you're like, hey, we had to move somebody off the team, and just talk about that a little bit? Because so I will say that I 100% agree. Family trumps everything, and I think a huge component of why you guys are so successful is just why the firm was started in the first place. Like, we don't want to be traveling to India to work on a sewage treatment thing over there. We want to be in Reading. We want to come home every night. We want to see our family. That was kind of the impetus for the firm being created in the first place. And you guys have done a great job of just keeping that family feel. But we also know that sometimes a lot of a good thing creates complacency and almost entitlement. And, hey, I'm not going to think of a good example, but work is also important. So how we have to be profitable at the end of the year in order to do all this. There's a lot of these customers have tremendous demands. How are you walking that balance? And then specifically when it gets to the point where you're dealing with a really problematic employee that maybe you have to part ways with, how much have you dealt with that, and how does you and your team deal with that?
Yeah, well, we're not immune to it, Perry. As I don't think anybody is, and of course, as we grow too, one or two of those situations can really consume you. But I think I've learned over the years too that I I don't think we want to apologize for who we are, and
Yeah.
we have a bus going one direction, and there's a seat on the bus for you going that direction, but the direction's already been established, and if that doesn't work for you, then there's no seat on the bus for you. And and it's hard. It's been hard in recent years, especially as we've gone through all this cancel culture stuff, and hurting people's feelings, and you can really drive yourself nuts trying to accommodate everybody and trying to not offend anybody. But at the end of the day, you have to stick with what got you here and what you believe in. And so we have had situations where, individuals, they just weren't a good fit. We are who we are. We're not going to apologize for it. And so we have to, part ways. And that
Mhm.
is usually a termination, but we often pay a multiple week severance, and we don't want to hurt somebody.
Right.
We want to give them an opportunity to succeed, maybe in a different venue that's better suited for them. And but we do have those situations. But if you're not careful, you can become who you don't want to be if you don't believe in who you are.
100%. 100%. Yeah, that's so well said. And I think that's such a critical part to protecting the culture is, unfortunately, doing the dirty work of saying, and you said it right, and it's absolutely true. Just because someone is not a core value fit in your organization doesn't mean that they won't be a fantastic core value fit in another organization, right?
Right.
And so it's an alignment issue. It's not us saying that, hey, you're a bad person or whatever. It's just saying, this is the way our company is going. You're not on board with that. That's okay. But to protect our team, protect this culture, we need to make you off the bus because our bus is going this way. And I thought you did a great job of kind of explaining that. I was just, I do a lot of driving in my job, and I was listening to an incredible podcast with, it had the CEO of Coinbase, which is a crypto, Bitcoin. And the guy is incredible, but he was talking about, kind of through COVID, and, he had about 30% of his employees kind of built this big thing about we're trying to make politics in business, right? And they wanted the company to make this big stand about, we're with BLM. It was around the George Floyd stuff and all that stuff. And to the guy's credit, I mean, he was pretty young at the time. Yeah. He's like, man, I was just busy working. I was not keeping up with, what was going on in politics. I mean, I was working, 18 hours a day and barely getting any sleep and just trying to keep the company functioning. And they wanted to turn us into this big political thing. And at the time it was super controversial, but he was one of the very first huge businesses that said, look, we're going to keep the main thing, and we're going to do what we do. And that is trying to make Bitcoin and crypto and, this basically think that we have this flawed financial system that we're trying to perfect, which is a good thing for humanity if we get it right. And we're going to keep focusing on what's good for humanity. And I think if we bring that back to our North State roots, right? And just saying, hey, we're going to continue to do what we think is best for our team and therefore our community and therefore our region. That's where we need to focus our attentions as leaders of people, right? And so anyway, I just thought that guy, that young at that time, guy did an amazing job of kind of describing, that. And it's so aligned with, I know what you do and kind of what we do. I just thought it was worth mentioning.
Yeah, that's an important point, Perry. And especially with our kids, our Gen Z kids, it's very important that they enter into a work environment where they feel like they make a positive difference on society, on humanity. Of course, that's easy in your business. It's pretty easy in our business too, but it's very exciting for these young people to come out of college and say, oh, wow, we're replacing a municipal drinking water for a small disadvantaged community in Northeast California kind of thing, and helping those communities with those kinds of projects. That's very, very important. I don't know that your and my generation appreciated that to the extent when we were younger men, but the current younger generation definitely does, and I think we've all, us older guys and gals have kind of evolved to that thinking as well. So it is very important, and we do a very good job, I think, of kind of keeping politics out of our walls of discussion. I mean, you can, by our core values, probably estimate, what side of the spectrum our company leans as a whole. Yeah. But we represent everybody here. And I think the nice thing, everybody's very respectful of people's perception. We don't talk a lot of politics within our walls here because that's not our mission. Right. But that can be especially these days, as divided as the country is, and it can go down a rabbit hole quick if you're not careful.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It just gets back to, you're either core value fit or you're not. And nowhere in our core values does it say, what political affiliation you need to be associated with. And you're right, our organization the same way. It leans one direction, there's no doubt. But, one of the things that we always talk about is also not having blind spots, right? You just, you can't be all a bunch of ditto heads and have massive blind spots. So I really appreciate those people in our organization that kind of give us a unique perspective. I'm not just talking politically. I'm just talking about just, you have leanings in every organization, and those people that are willing to stand up and go, wait a minute, have we thought about this? And that's super valuable. Yeah. So, I wanted to pivot one more time to, we just brushed on COVID and a whole nother thing, but can you tell us a little bit about building a brand new massive office at Stillwater Business Park? In fact, they think you were one of the first to go out there, and it has been teed up and ready for, I don't know how long before you guys went, and just navigating that on top of just it's not super cheap to build anything from the ground up anymore, and B, now let's go ahead and do it during COVID when fear was just spiked and everybody was running for the hills. Paul and his management team says, hey, let's go spend millions and millions of dollars and go build a brand new office. Can you let's share that with our audience a little bit? Because I'm sure you were just super confident through that whole process and just certain that you were making all the right decisions at the time. So just reflect back on that for us, please.
Yeah, that was a challenging time, especially, the traditional brick and mortar companies were selling their real estate assets and moving everybody to remote, or acquiring a building half the size that they had because they didn't need the space. And here we are wanting to more than double the size of the space we had before. The one thing that kind of swayed the decision is we're currently in the midst of some really key retirements at pace. And back then, around COVID time, there was we had forecast that within about a 6 to 8 year period, we needed to turn over about 2/3 of our ownership through retirements. Huge.
In how much time did you need to turn over that 2/3?
About 6 to 8 years.
Wow.
And so when you start thinking about that, and of course, we're retiring men and women with 30 plus years experience. You don't replace those with an entry level, college graduate. And so we knew that we needed to add resources and staff and start the mentoring and training with these senior leaders while they were still here in order to prepare for this retirement bubble. And we frankly didn't have the room to add the resources we needed to prepare for these retirements. So the big thing for me is that, if we don't build this building, we have no good transition plan to get us through the retirements. And at least if we do build it, we have a chance.
Right.
And so it really came, It was that simple, Perry. And when we had a contract with a contractor to build it, and between the time we got approvals through permits and started acquiring materials, just the lumber package for the building had increased like 40%. And, but if we would have started a year later, that same lumber package would have been 250% more. So you could argue that, maybe, we were kind of on that front. And then I know I've shared this story before with our Vistage group, but, we had built in what we thought was a 10 to 12, maybe even 15-year growth in the building with, vacant space and offices, et cetera. Well, as soon as the building project became imminent, we started hiring people, and we were doubling up offices and putting people in closets on our Court Street building because we knew we had this to move into. So when we moved in, we had consumed about half of that surplus store or room that we thought we had. And then within 18 months, we had filled the building up. So, we got a new building 18 months old, and we're bursting at the seams, and it's like, oh my gosh, are we gonna have to do an addition now? So we're still navigating that a little bit, but we have gotten a little more creative with use of our workspace, and I think an addition is imminent, and the challenge now is trying not to time that with the peak of this retirement bubble to minimize the overall debt to the company. So we're hoping to push it off a few years, but yeah, that was a challenging decision to make. But again, it really, for me, it was if we don't do it, we don't have a chance to get. Yeah,
you said it's such a. You're saying it's such a simple. It was a simple decision because it came down to that. But again, that comes to. There's so much fear that was happening then. And so to really say, hey, we're going to lead with faith and not with fear, and is pretty remarkable. And then, engineers are classic overthinkers, right? And so you guys have a staff filled with overthinkers, and just a lot of us have lived through that COVID thing and haven't forgotten how much fear there was. There was, I still remember my office just going, apeshit probably is a little too extreme, but very concerned about, do we even shoot, Gavin Newsom on the thing saying the state is locked down, nobody goes to work. And then my people are like, are we going to work? Are we not going to work? What do you want us to do? We were not set up to work from home at all.
Right.
And I'm like, the hell no, we are showing up to work, and I don't care what anybody on the damn news is saying. Yeah. We've got work to do. And so anyway, but it's I love how it's very typical, Paul. It was a very simple decision. It was not a simple decision. So I know you guys eventually got there, but was like everybody in your office. I know you guys are really good at kind of breaking things down and pros and cons, and this is, and leading with logic, right? I think that's what a lot of people are not great at, is they lead with emotions and not with logic. So that is one great thing about an engineer, is you guys go, look, we've got all these retirements coming. They're all going to hit in the next 68 years. If we don't have the space, we physically can't do it at Court Street. So even if we don't choose to build out at Stillwater, we've got to add on to Court Street, which it's old building. There's a lot of limitations there. We've got to find another building that we can go rent, or we can start. We have this office and we rent another office. So I had to be a lot of discussions about how maybe we just rent a second office and we have part of our staff there. What made you go, yes, we're moving forward and going to go spend several $1 million building a new office?
Yeah, we did consider, leasing or acquiring offsite space, and that was not very well received from the company, and from the top to the bottom. everybody likes being together. They like being under one roof. That's kind of our culture, our teamwork kind of culture. And they just felt that it would impact our culture too much to split the company up. From a financial perspective, that probably would have been the right decision, but at the expense of what, right? And if our job is to protect culture at all costs, then that was probably a pretty expensive approach to take. So we decided if whatever we do, we're going to do it such that we can be under one roof. And for better or worse, we knew the numbers. We had good costs from contractors. We knew what it would cost. We felt good that we could afford it, but that was all based on whether the same work opportunities were going to continue after COVID, which nobody knew what was going to happen there. So there was a little bit of leap of faith there. So, and I know I've talked to you, I've talked to Bruce Dean and others in Vistage. Our job is to try to look into the future and make decisions. And who can do that? If we could do that, we wouldn't be sitting here talking probably. But I always lean back to, if the past is any reasonable indication of the future, I think we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be work. I don't think that, the end of COVID, the work is just going to stop, or the work opportunities or the money that they're funneling into infrastructure. Obviously, if that would have happened, we probably wouldn't be here. But the workflow continued, and I felt good that if it did, that we'd be able to afford it and get by. So there was a lot of spreadsheet work. And what if, what's the worst case scenario here? If our business drops 10%, can we make this mortgage payment? Or can we still pay out dividends to shareholders? Can we work through a lot of scenarios that I don't know if, I think they would have been considered worst case scenarios based on our history, but COVID was unprecedented. I mean, that was probably 100%. One of the most stressful times as a leader that I've ever experienced, because there was no playbook. There was no protocol. And, you're just making decisions day by day on the seat of your pants with conflicting information and trying to keep your organization at a level that, they trust you. And that was not fun. And I have a lot of respect for all the leaders during that time, even those that are still getting chastised for it. It's like, it's easy to chastise a leader, but if you haven't been in that position trying to make those decisions during those circumstances, you're not entitled of an opinion, in my humble opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. That's so well said. Yeah. So, okay. Can you also now kind of take us through 17 years ago when you kind of took over the helm? How many engineers did you guys have, kind of roughly, and the total employees, and then, where you guys are, or where you were in revenues kind of in the beginning, and then kind of what trends you've been seeing in your revenues the last few years? Can you share that with us if it's not too personal?
Sure. Yeah. I think in 2008-ish, I think we judge it based on kind of our gross revenue. And I think at that time we were around 6 million, I think, as a company. And I think we had about 30 to 35 total employees. And and currently we're about 85 employees. And I think this year, we're going to hit about 25 million in gross revenues. Through that time, we added an instrumentation and controls division, a mechanical division. So we got a little more broad with the services we could provide, which has enabled us to get involved in, larger multidiscipline projects that require all those engineering disciplines. So, large commercial buildings, institutional buildings, that sort of thing. So we've developed a few more capabilities during that time, and it's really been relatively organic growth. The one thing that gave us a big growth burst was coming out of COVID, and the state shut down for a year, so they weren't providing any services. Meanwhile, the rest of us are paying taxes, so the state had a ton of money. And, we had several applications in for public works projects in the coffer, and the state was calling us up saying, hey, you've got a $5 million project in here. Can you increase that? We need to spend more money. And it was like, oh, really? Okay. So, so there was a period there about 3 years, if you will, where the state was really trying to roll out that infrastructure money. And we were kind of right in the middle of it. And, that's when we were adding staff like crazy and trying to, power up to be able to do that work. Well, it's since normalized and come back down to earth. It doesn't take long to spend, those reserve monies, but it's a more normal, what I'm used to now, which is a lot more competitive. Projects aren't as big in terms of dollar amounts. And, they're not coming in like they were, the first 2 or 3 years after COVID. So the future is, there's some uncertainty there. There's still, we're still trying to figure out, what the ultimate impacts are going to be from some of the economic policy decisions that we're doing now with tariffs and that sort of thing. And, it's just kind of, it's very somewhat volatile. But I come back to maintain that, services like roads and bridges and water systems and wastewater systems and schools and hospitals and, those kinds of things that we need as basic services to function, until they just pull funding from all that, I got to believe there's going to be work opportunities out there for, Hat Creek construction and Pace engineering. So can't predict it, but
I completely agree. Yeah, I completely agree. And that's you said it earlier, but there's a quote. I can't remember who did it, but somebody famous, like a president. But it was like the further you look back, the farther forward you could see, right? So basically really pay attention to your history, pay attention to, trends that have happened over the last 30 years in your industry. And then, you kind of be looking at that moving forward. And we all know that these industries do this, right? But in general, it's still a slow climb over time if you can manage through the ups and the downs. And that's, as leaders, that's what we get paid to do, right? Yeah. That's what we get paid to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I was thinking as you were talking there for a moment ago, I was thinking about how during COVID, because we had talked about that, how you and I were kind of texting back and forth about, are you having a Christmas party? I mean, just the crazy things that, we're trying to get some feedback because, I was talking to everybody and I'm like, no, we're not doing anything. And I'm like, our team was so hungry. Our team is very much like your team. We have multi offices now, and we're kind of getting to the point where we're starting to navigate that. But, we've always been under kind of a one roof type of company, and everybody knows each other really well. And a lot of our friends are in the business, and we do things outside of business together as friends. And, we have our Intermountain Fair is this weekend. And this is which is when you see everybody for, the one time a year you get to run into everybody and have a beer and get to catch up on stuff. And there's just a lot of connected togetherness. And I just remember, we canceled a couple of Christmas parties, and I really regretted that later on. And then as kind of a reaction to that, to make it because at the time, I mean, it's hard for people to think. In hindsight, it was so clear, but in the time it was so muddy and so murky, and there's so much potential liability that, hey, let's have a Christmas party. And then Johnny goes home and visits with, 85-year-old grandma and got COVID at your super spreader event and goes and kills grandma. I mean, who wants that on their conscience? I mean, nobody wants that. And so anyway, I remember my wife was like, F this. We are going to have, you're turning 50, and I'm not a guy I'm very much like you. I'm not a spotlight guy. My business partner's wife, so Weston's wife, Lauren, has her and my birthday with 1 day apart. So we had a joint, she was turning 40, I was turning 50. We had a joint birthday party at my house. And it was one of those things where you just kind of invited maybe, I don't know, 50 people, right? And Paul, it was outside, but it was one of those things where it was the middle of summer, so it was good weather. I'll bet you we had 200 people there. It was unfreaking real, and it was so much fun, and it's exactly what everybody needed, because everybody was just like, I'm just sick of this. I miss people. I want to be around people, and I'll take the risks. I'm a big person. It was something where it's not a company sanctioned event. The company can't be, it's a personal thing. If you want to be mad at Perry later on or whatever, that's one thing, but you're not gonna be blaming us corporately for it. And so anyway, I just was thinking about how you were back and forth. And to your credit, I think you guys had, you had at least one of those during the time where you had your Christmas party anyway, right?
We did. Yeah. I think we canceled one and we had one. Yeah. We got to the same point, Perry, and it's like, and then as a leader, when you start getting down to the end of it, you start feeling like you were duped. And
so bad. I know. So bad.
But at the time, we had all the same emotions, and, you're trying to listen to the CDC, you're listening to the governor, you're trying to listen to, the WOW, and everybody has their guidelines, and, you have a big organization too. And, all you need is that one individual in your organization that says, oh, well, you didn't follow the guidelines and it led to this, and what's the liability associated with that? Nobody had navigated that. So
nobody navigated that. Yep.
So you couldn't evaluate risk, and but yeah, the thing that kind of sent me, and it happened right towards the end when the state came down and said they were going to mandate employers to track the vaccination status of their employees, and that's when I said, up till then, I was trying to be a good scout and try to comply. Right. But at that one, I said, I am not doing that. You can take me to jail. I will go to jail, but I am not going to do that. And it was like 3 weeks later, they lifted everything. But I'm thinking, you're gonna impose that requirement on private employees to do the job of a state agency, and make me the bad guy? Come on.
Yeah, 100%. I know. Yeah. Well, okay. So we're wrapping up, but here I'm going to end it with North State Rocks. So tell me, what is your favorite thing to do in the North State? I know hunting and fishing, but is there a specific place? And so give me a couple things, like where's your favorite restaurant you and your wife go in the Reading, or actually it doesn't have to be in Reading, in the North State. And then, what's your favorite place to take new people when they visit you, haven't been to the area? Give me a couple of those things of what people should do here in the North State.
Yeah, well, I love Shasta Lake. I have a family of bass fishermen, and we do a lot of bass fishing on Shasta Lake throughout the year, especially the winter and spring months. So that's definitely a favorite. But the thing I love about Reading is, you can go 4 directions, and be in completely different, geographically unique areas. I mean, in 2.5 hours, you can be on the coast in the Pacific Ocean, one of the most beautiful coasts along the whole Pacific coast, basically. North, you got Mount Shasta area, Weed, of course, Dunsmuir. I love the Upper Sacramento River, fishing up there. I like the desert too. You head east towards Fall River and through Big Valley and get up into Devil's Garden area. I'd love to hunt and fool around up there. And then, of course, you get to Alturas in Nevada is very unique. You got the Warner Mountain Range there, and I'd love to play around in that country. And then I had duck blinds down in the valley for years, down south of Willows, and I love. There's not a better place on earth for the things that I like to do than this hub in Northern California. And when it comes to restaurants, I don't know if I have a favorite. It really depends on the mood, but I'm a big fan of Jack's Cattleman's. I like steak. I also like Mexican food. I like Casa Ramos and Casa Rios here in Reading. I even like the little Mexican food restaurant there in Fall River Mills. When I'm up there working,
Yeah.
that's a definite lunch spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I don't need much to be satisfied.
Awesome. Well, Paul, I just want to thank you so much for your time on the podcast today. You did awesome. It was incredible. Thank you so much for sharing some time with us. And I guess I get to see you in just a few days at our Vistage meeting. So looking forward to that too.
Yeah. And I think I might be dove hunting with my son that morning. He's coming over from Reno. So.
Only because it's your son am I going to let you out of that. Because we just talked about family. So all right, I'm going to let you have that one, Paul. If it was going to be a work thing, I'm like, nope, you got to come. You got to come.
It wouldn't be work.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, thanks again for your time, buddy.